been smashed to smithereens. There wasn't a whole pane of glass in there. Safe. Anyway, it's changed things a bit because there was a sort of camaraderie or something between us and the guards, because they were in the same position that we were in. Really, nobody, and the idea of what was going on, the bombing, was. We were all in two minds about I mean, it was a war. Germany had to be beaten and so forth. Of course, at this time we didn't know anything about the Bomber-Harris controversy or anything like that. But we had arguments among ourselves about what was going on and so on. There was once.
Why were you arguing? What?
Well, I mean, there was a pacifist element among most of us. I mean, most of us were not there for death or glory and that sort of thing. There was none of that about it. In fact, what we wanted was the war to finish and us go home. That was all we did want.
So this bombing really brought about a change in your state, your mind.
Yes, and then the work, you see, the way the camp had been organised, going out to these jobs, there was always this prospect of being caught out in an air raid, and the guards were just as anxious to not to be in the line of fire as we were, and there was a realisation that whether you were a prisoner or a guard, what coloured uniform you had on wasn't going to make any difference. The bomb, when the bomb came, you know, and I can remember being on a job where we were close to some hills outside, on the outskirts of Cleganfert, on the other side, and pine woods, and the guard taking us up into the pine woods till it was time to march back to the camp. Because and obviously he felt safe up there on these hills in the pine woods. There was a fairly relaxed about us. I mean, we could have escaped really. There were plenty of times when I didn't have a guard watching what I was doing, and it happened to us, all of us, I think. But what would you do? Where would you go? Now, escapes had been made from that camp, but they'd been prepared a long time before. And in fact, one chap escaped as a girl. He kept out of the way of the guards. I don't know how he managed it, but he grew his hair long. Because in those days, a man with the long hair would have been picked on straight away. But he grew his hair long, and he went with another chap. And they got quite a long way, actually, but they were caught in the end. But he'd pretended to be a girl. Anyway, but the people that had escaped, I'd never been one of them. They'd always gone on the same working party each day, and taken a little bit of something that the food or something else, and hidden it, and made a cache on this job that they were on. Made a cache of food and other things, and possibly clothing. See, and because one of the tricks was we could get dyes, and you could dye a pair of khaki trousers dark blue. And then you look like a civilian, you see, and things like that they did, but but you couldn't do it without going through a long period of building up your stores, and then when it was done, we always had a bit of fun moving people about from one hut to another, so that the Germans would think we were all there when there were a couple missing. And but anyway, that's going back a bit, about these things. When it comes to this bombing, as I say, there was a fair relaxation about our relationship with the Guards, because the enemy, to some extent, we felt that the enemy was up there in the sky. Maybe Americans or what, but they were when somebody is flying over your head in a flying fortress and about to release bombs, well, he becomes an enemy, even though he's supposed to be on your side. Anyway, this went on like this then, till the end of the war. Oh, the dining room, so-called, where the piano was, got bombed to bits, and the piano was smashed up in that raid. But they gave us another piano. They did actually provide us with another piano, and that hut was rebuilt, which is quite remarkable, I think. Anyway, it went on like that to the end of the war. And
Did you know what was going on, though? Who told you that the war was had reached that particular point of major importance?
We got bulletins because the hut next to us, next to the hut I was in, had a good radio under the floorboards, and somebody used to clamber down underneath there and work this radio. But it was done in the evening, and they used to get BBC and everything on this. And but they gave us a couple of taps on the wall when they were about to switch it on, and so on. And then I would play the accordion, and I'd do an accordion concert for an hour or so, and we'd even have the guards standing about outside listening. But I was covering any sound that was coming from this radio. And then the next day we'd get a bulletin on where things were up to, including quotations from Winston's speeches and so forth. So we knew what was going on, and we knew when VE Day came. Although the Allies didn't come, we had a few days. The Guards left. In fact, I don't really know what happened to them. They just seemed to disappear. We just got up one morning and the camp was ours. The gates were open, the camp was ours. We could go in and out as we liked. It was the best place to be anyway. We had food and everything there. And the lads wandered round the town. Some of them found girlfriends. I went for a few long walks and rides on the tram cars and one thing and another. But then one night, it was going dark actually, and we heard terrific gunfire. Now, everybody had a different explanation, but it came from a line of hills called the Satsnitz that run along to the south of Klagenfurt. Satnitz, this line of hills, they're not as high as the mountains behind, which are called the Karavanken. And the Yugoslav border runs along the top of the Karavanken. But the sound, this gunfire was coming from these hills. Now, some of us said, it looks like the partisans are going to attack Klagenfurt. And nobody had a proper explanation at all. Anyway, I said, well, I'm not going to get mixed up in a fight, a battle here, if I can go somewhere else. And somebody, I don't know how he knew, he said, do you know there's a train going to Salzburg tonight? I don't know how this man knew. He said it's stopping at Klagenfurt Lent station. Now Klagenfurt Lent was about a quarter of an hour's walk from the prison camp. 10 minutes perhaps. So I packed up my belongings, went to the Klagenfurt Lent station, and sure enough, this train came in and I got on it. And it was going to go to Salzburg. Anyway, it was fairly slow going. Nobody collected any tickets. Nobody collected any money. And it went on. This was really getting to the early hours of the morning. It was starting to come daylight. We started going up the Spital Valley, and I came to Spital station, and I thought to myself, oh, I'll not stay in this train all the way to Salzburg. I'll get out here. And you see, Salzburg is on the German border, the border between Germany and Austria. Now, where the train was at this time, we were close to the Italian border. And I thought, well, I'll get out here and start walking and see if I can meet the British troops. There must be somewhere about. You see, the war was over. So I got out and walked along the road, and it was very strange, feeling free, walking along, and came to a prison camp, and I went in, and there was only one man in the place. So I said, where are they all? Oh, he said, in good Liverpudlian, he said, they've all got girlfriends. They're all out with them. I said, well, what are you doing here? Oh, he says, well, just had a delivery of 8 weeks Red Cross parcels. He said, I'm the cook. So he was, he said to me, what part of the country did you come from, Whack? So I told him I'd come from Liverpool, same as he had, and so I stayed there. They had loads of Red Cross parcels. Well, next morning, the Allied troops did actually arrive, and they arrived in. Well, they kept coming along the road for long enough, and I decided I'd get back to Klagenfurt, and I did actually make my way in a car, actually, which I purloined, and got back to Villach and then to Klagenfurt, where I found that they were making preparations to fly the prisoners out. Now, after being away from home for 5 years or so, I was more interested in getting out than in anything else, and I'd found the car I'd had before had broken down, but I found another one in Klagenfurt, and I'd been using that for a bit, and it had been left deaf by somebody, you know. But I finished up.
What do you mean? It had been left?
Well, presumably broken down, really. But anyway, a couple of us got it going, and another one actually, and I used this for going around Klagenfurt for the next day or so, but I stayed on the aerodrome, because when planes were taking off, I wanted to be on one of them. I wasn't interested in anything else, really. And eventually, I got, you see, it was all slapdash, really. They had a plane going off, taking the prisoners out, a Dakota, and I had the opportunity to actually drove up to the plane and got in his little car and got out and got in the plane and went. And they...
You actually got in the plane and
Well, after a bit we took off. There was no... Well, they were not... They were wanting to get the prisoners out of the way, really. And they weren't... So there wasn't a case of filling up papers or forms or anything like that. They sort of had us... They were getting us away. All that part would come later. They were only in the air for about an hour, and they brought us down near Naples, and we there was sort of army bedding and so on, and we sort of spent the night there, and next morning off again. Flew over Venice. Venice from the air was quite a sight, especially under those circumstances. Over the Apennines and down to Naples. And we were in Naples for the next 4 or 5 days where we were processed. They really did get to town on us, army numbers and everything, and sorting out who we were and giving us inoculations. 4 inoculations in one go, really, because you were sort of on... the doctors were lined up, and we sort of came along in between them, and they went at it, because there were a lot of us. And the next thing was in another plane, a Liberator, and we were sitting in the bomb bay, and thing took off, and sitting down in the bomb bay wasn't very pleasant, but still we didn't care. We were going home. But one of the crew signalled to me, would I like to go into a gun turret, which I did. So I came across from Italy, across France, across the English Channel, landed not far from can't think of the name of the place where they make carpets.
Axminster?
No, it wasn't Axminster. I can't think of it. No. But anyway, we landed, and I think we got a meal. It was a bit funny to find everybody was talking English, but and then they took us to Beaconsfield, where there was accommodation. And the next thing was that we were processed again and given rail cards and so forth, and given home leave. Now that night. There were about 3 or 4 phone boxes, and a long queue at each one of them, and they weren't charging those phone boxes. They had been on this site, knowing that we were prisoners of war. They were letting us talk, you see, and so I rang up home, told them where I was, and so forth, and. And next day managed to get home. All very, and on repatriation leave, I think we called it, and I think there was 6 weeks of that. Unfortunately, before the 6 weeks were over, because it was absolutely marvellous. We thought really that that everything was right from then on. You know, you couldn't imagine anything going long after that. The war, the worst thing that had ever happened with this war was now over. And that's feeling great euphoria. Unfortunately, my inoculations took a bad turn, and on one shoulder, I can't remember which one it was now. I think it was the left one. Anyway, it came out like a balloon, and it was something to do with these inoculations. And I finished up for a while in Walton Hospital. In those days, you could, soldiers, or any of the forces, if you went in hospital, you were given a blue suit with a red tie. And I was given one of these. And as the things started to get better, as the balloon-like shoulder started to go down, and I started to get about a bit, and I could, and for about a week, I think, I was going home and going about with my family, and so forth, but going back to the hospital to sleep. I had to be in there to sleep, and then eventually got instructions to join another unit, RASC unit, in near Haywards Heath in Sussex, Surrey rather, and they shunted us out to Yeovil for a while, and things were going on, you see, and then I got another leave because I don't think they knew what to do with us really, and it was, I think, I went to see Healer down in, she was down in South Wales in the Land Army, and we got news that the Japanese war was over. And from then on...
So this would be late 1945, wouldn't it?
Yes. Now, a funny thing happened. I'd had 6 years by this time in the army, always longing to get out of it. I wanted to get out of the army, wanted to get back home, get out of the army. And a week or so before I was, they had these dates then for demob. Anyway, a few weeks before my demob date, to which I'd been so looking forward, I got somehow or other, I don't know how I got the information, but an offer to go to what they called a formation college. And you could do a month at the formation college. This was still in the army, you see. So I plumped for this and went in a khaki uniform into a camp near Kidderminster, where army discipline was completely, totally relaxed. We were mixing the officers, the other ranks and so forth, all mixed up together. And I had the time of my life really, because...
what were you doing there?
I was doing English and maths, and it was like being in college. And
how long did that last?
A month I was there. And I did a lot of piano playing.
What was the purpose of it?
Well, it was those that wanted to, who could perhaps improve their chances of getting decent jobs and things like that. I didn't mind becoming a school teacher. And at the end of that, I had an interview, which I made a pig's ear of it now. But this month or so at the formation college was great. And as I say, there was...
How long was it before you were discharged? Demobbed?
Well, as soon as I finished at the Formation College, I was demobbed, because I was really a month overdue then. I should have, anyway, I got my demob, which was a funny thing. I got...
what date was that?
I got a very cheap raincoat. And
what date was that?
Now you've got me.
Do you know the month?
Well, let me see. I think it must have been in the autumn. We'd had VJ Day. That's right. Yes, because it was.
It would be in the autumn of 1945, wouldn't it?
Well, let me see. I was in the army six years. So it must have been in the spring of 1946 when I came out.
I see.
Yes.
And what happened after that?
Well, I went back to my old job in Bootle Corporation, but not in the Parks Department. I'd never been happy in the Parks Department. I was no gardener, and I went in what they call the Works Department, and I was just driving lorries and odd jobs and so forth, and that lasted for a while, and but I realised that I wanted to do something else, and a bit later on I did the middle of the summer as a professional musician, playing the piano with a little group in the Isle of Man.
During the summer months?
Yes. Well, I was playing in Glen Helen, actually. It rained most of the time.
That's not unusual, is it? Had you got married by then?
Oh, no. Now, that didn't happen till 1947. We got married in October 1947.
So have you much to say about your little summer in the Isle of Man?
I can't think of a lot, really. I think I had my bike with me, and I rode around the island a bit, and so forth. I got to know the Isle of Man quite well, really, and it was a funny time of the year. A funny time altogether for everybody. Lots of people were looking for somewhere to spend money, because there'd been things had been so restricted during the war. And as far as I can tell, there were people coming over to the Isle of Man who just wanted to spend money, really. I wanted to earn some, which I did. And at least what seemed like money then, it's not only chicken feed now.
Did you play your piano in an hotel or
well,
a dance hall? Or?
Well, part of the time in the hotel, and part of the time in what they call the Glen. You see, in the Isle of Man, you have these sort of open spaces that are privately owned, and people pay to go in, and then they could have open air dancing. That was the idea, to have open air dancing. Most of the time, it was too wet for them to dance, but we went on playing just the same. And now I can't remember a lot about what I did from then on. I think I went back to the Bootle Corporation for a bit for the winter, and then next summer I did a stint in the Isle of Man again with a different group, different band. We called it. It was 4-piece, and in Port Erin, and we that carried on through to the autumn. Now, while that was on, actually, Healer, who had been in the sanitarium, TB, and was convalescing, she came over and stayed in a boarding house nearby, and I got a car. I'd put at that time you put your name down for a car, and then eventually it came through and you got it, I drove her and also the other members of the band at different times all around the Isle of Man.
That would be a new car then, wouldn't it?
New, yes.
What make was it?
I've got it wrong about that. I'd got this Ford. It was a Ford that I'd got, what they call the Anglia, the first of the Anglias, and I took that over to the Isle of Man. That's right, I remember this. They had no facilities for taking cars over at the time, and it was sort of pushed up ramps onto the deck, it wasn't a car carrying boat, and lifted off with a crane at the other end, and then it had to be relicensed in the Isle of Man. So that I finished up with 2 sets of number plates for that car, but eventually I did what a lot of people were doing. I put my name down for another one because you had to wait. Cars were scarce, everything was scarce, and then I sold the Ford and got this other one, which was a Standard 8, and carried on for a while with that until we came back from the Isle of Man. Well, the next thing, in the autumn really by this time, October.
What date was that? What date?
October the 20th, that's right. 1947. Healer and I got married at Bootle Free Church, Unitarian Church. The minister conducting it was Reverend Keir Murren, who was Healer's brother, and my brother was there as best man, and he became a parson later, minister for the Presbyterians, and so we were in good company, as you can see. Anyway, we got married, and I was out of work, and I've been out of work 1 or 2 times since. Anyway, there was a scheme that I joined for ex-servicemen, government scheme. This one was for agriculture. You went and worked on farms, and you were paid by the government, really. I think the farmer paid the government, and you were as trainee, and I was fixed up on a farm in Holmeswood, near Rufford, and after I had a few weeks of riding up and down on my bike between there and Bootle, and one thing and another, but we then got a caravan. We bought a caravan to live in. Had it towed to Holmeswood on the farm, and carried on like that.
But you were living in Bootle, having moved from the Isle of Man?
Oh yes, all this, we're based in Bootle then, but then when we were in the caravan, of course, we were living in Holmeswood. So at this period, Healer was under treatment for her TB, and we had to find out ways and means of doing this. And actually, she was going to a hospital at Rufford for her what we called refills, where they pumped air into the lung cavity. This went on for a long time after that. She...
How many years? Was it years?
5 years altogether.
As much as that?
Yes. Oh, yes. And so this is another reason why, at the age of 78, I'm 36 years older than my elder daughter and 40 years older than my younger daughter, and good heavens, 67 years older than my eldest grandchild. So it's rather spread out in years, our family. Anyway, to come back to the point of
Holmeswood, you were at.
Holmeswood, yes. We moved after a while from Holmeswood to another farm at Mellor, near Blackburn, and finished out the year of training. It really was a bit of a washout, this. I was, I didn't, well, I had a year's working on these two farms, but the idea of having a small holding, which was what had started us off on this, and because there was a bit of a feeling of back to the land, you know, going on after the war. Food was scarce and so forth. We realised that we would have needed about 10 times as much money as we had to do it, and it was out of the question. I got a job at Chadgley Dairy, just as a labouring job, and which was...
Where was Chadgley Dairy?
It's it's actually in the Hodder Valley. It's right in the wilds. It's the other side of Longridge Fell, near Chipping. I think Chipping's the nearest village of any size, and it was very interesting. It was a very interesting cycle ride I had to get to it. But we had to move from the farm, and we had the caravan moved to Whalley. I say we had to have it moved because we hadn't got anything to tow it with ourselves. And we finished up in a very beautiful spot at Whalley, overlooking the Calder River and so forth, and I carried on there. I had to go to something like a dairy or something like that because I was still under orders to be on this direction of labour that they called it.
Control of engagements, I think.
Yes. To be on agriculture, so they counted it as agriculture, and then allowed me to move from there to an egg packing station, which they also considered to be agriculture. But I couldn't have gone and got a job any outside agriculture at that time, and. Anyway, the egg packing station job was very interesting. I was driving all over Bowland, you know, Ribble Valley, Forest of Pendle, and so forth.
Picking up eggs?
I was picking up eggs. That was my job. There were other lads that were delivering eggs to grocery firms and so forth, but I was going into the farms and picking up eggs. It was only a 30 hundredweight van, because if you took anything bigger into some of those farmyards, you'd never be able to get out again. I carried on like that. Oh, and now in the meantime, we were living in the van at Whalley, but we'd had a bit of bother because the council official had decided that we had to move, being in what they call a mobile home, which wasn't supposed to stay for more than 6 weeks in one place, according to the law. Anyway, I was taken to court, pointed out that I had a job in the district, we had nothing else to live in, and that if they cared to give us a council house, we'd be very happy to occupy it. Well, they didn't give us a council house, but they left us alone in the caravan for another couple of years, and that went on. But eventually, we did buy a little, well, on the mortgage, of course, a little house in Langho, and moved there. I was still, I think, on the packing station job then, and so it went on. Hela finished having her constant treatment for TB. Actually, the TB treatment's been revolutionised since then, but they were all the same. It was very good. She stuck to it to the letter, what she had to do and not to do, and so forth. But then she got pregnant, and Moira was born on the 23rd of April, was it 1952? That's right. And
was she born at Langho?
Well, we were living at Langho. She was actually born in Queen's Park Hospital, Blackburn, and we carried on at Langho for a while. I left the Direction of Labour order, came off, and I...
Can you remember what year that came off?
No, I can't.
Roughly?
I've no idea, really. She was born in 1952, so that it must have been about 1950, I think, that came off. But then, and I had an insurance agency in Blackburn. I had to buy the book, you know, the system, and it was not a tremendous financial success. We were living more or less hand to mouth, really, but it was quite good to.
And you were operating from Langho?
I lived at Langho, yes. I had a brass plate on the door saying that I was a co-op insurance agent, and so I got one or two customers from round about as well. But I'm not really very good at talking people into parting with their money. And
how did you get about then?
Oh well, now I'd been cycling. I've been a keen cyclist really all my life, and when I was from way back when I was with the Bootle Corporation, and the lad who was our sort of charge hand, a wonderful man named Walter Pavey. He was the captain of the Liverpool Co-op Cycling Club, and I joined that. And for years I'd been cycling. We considered to cycle 100 miles in a day was nothing out of the ordinary. But anyway, at this time I went in for a motorbike. I bought a Coventry Eagle very cheap, which a two-stroke, which kept seizing up. And then got a BSA 350, which turned out to be quite a good bike. We did some good long runs on that. We even went to meet friends in near Dover, and we went from Langho to Dover in a day on a 350. It was worse for Hela. She was sitting on the pillion. But after that, when she was getting pregnant for Moira, I fixed a sidecar on it, and so we went on. But after Moira was born, came a situation. Actually, Hela's father had died. He died just a bit before Moira was born, which was and he'd been looking forward to Hela's baby arriving. It was very sad, really. But Hela's mother was in a bit of difficulty about keeping her house going and so on. And we went back to Bootle to share the house with her. And I had to sell this insurance book. And for more or less, I think we'd sort of broke even more or less on that. And then looked for one or two jobs around Bootle, Liverpool. Got jobs, but they were not terribly good ones. I found myself looking for another one each time, you see. But then we decided.
You kept the wolf from the door, one way or the other.
Oh, the dance band. Well, playing in dance bands did really do that. It kept the wolf from the door, and that was the thing perhaps I should have been doing that full time professionally. But it's a sort of job which you can't live in one place for or anything like that, you see. So anyway, I've lost the track of this for a moment.
Well, you've moved to Bootle and your various jobs.
Ah, yes.
Did you you once told me that you worked at a factory that made oil drums.
Yes, I worked at that place that made oil drums for a while.
What was the name of it?
Bravies. I was driving a wagon round the works most of the time, really, because it was a big works, and so. But anyway, and then I went to timber yard, driving for the timber yard. It was a good job I could drive, and found myself driving up and down the Liverpool docks. I came to know the docks quite well, and it was a very, very interesting place, actually.
You had quite a variety of jobs then in that period.
Yes, we decided we wanted to move away really from Bootle.